Hey guys, what's up? This is Nils Davis. I'm a product manager and I'm the author of the Secret Product Manager Handbook, an actual book about how to do product management, which you can find out about in the notes below. I also have a blog of the same name, and I have this YouTube channel where I put up videos about product management, product marketing, how to be a better product manager, how to do market discovery, how to be more innovative, how to be more persuasive, and generally a lot of things that you need to know how to do to be a good product manager. In today's video, I talk about the curse of knowledge, something that we product managers suffer from, and how to overcome it with a sort of set of template questions you can use when you're doing market discovery or other activities where you're trying to get information as opposed to impart information. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you really like it, please share it with your colleagues and your friends. And of course, it is a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to it, and I welcome you to do that. If you have any thoughts or responses on this topic, or if you want to ask about other product management topics, definitely leave a comment down below. I look at all the comments, I answer them, and oftentimes they actually turn into new video topics and new blog topics. So I really love to get your comments, and it helps me generate new ideas. I do mention a few things in this video, like the guy that I got the idea for this particular topic from, John Cutler. I'll put the link to his Twitter and also his Medium page where he blogs, and some super interesting blogs that he writes. Let's get started talking about how to overcome that bad curse of knowledge for product managers. As product managers, we have to go out and find market problems. That's a big part of what we do, and it can be challenging for some reasons. So I'm going to talk about those reasons, and so thanks for joining me. The idea here is, what do we do when we're trying to find market problems and we're a little bit stuck, and we need to figure out how to continue on the conversation when we're trying to find out market problems. And there's a lot of different ways that we can get stuck. And this whole set of thoughts came to me from a tweet that this guy, John Cutler, who does great writing about product management and agile and stuff like that. He had this great tweet the other day. It was a trick that he recommended. If you're doing some market discovery, maybe on the fly, maybe you're not as prepared as you would ordinarily be, or you heard something that you maybe weren't expecting to hear. And he suggested this technique, which is to start to ask a question and then pause before continuing the question to give yourself time to think. And this is generally actually a really great tool to use whenever you're speaking. You don't need to keep speaking the entire time. You can leave openness, and that's a good tool for both persuasion as well as for asking questions. So he suggested, so my question is, and then he would pause. Now, I've talked about in the videos about persuasion, I talked about the importance of the pregnant pause, so to speak, and what it's useful for. So there's some useful things that the pregnant pause can do. One is it, of course, gives you time to think about the rest of your sentence, and that's useful. If we're trying to think, be on our feet, and make good decisions, giving ourselves a little bit of time to think is great. It also sometimes makes your audience feel that you are more together than you actually feel like you are, that you actually are being very reflective and thinking a lot and thinking deeply. The other really great thing about the pregnant pause, though, is if you leave it long enough, somebody's going to fill it. It doesn't have to be you, and it can often be the person you're talking to. So in this case, you might come up with a question after you pause. You might come up with the rest of that question, but the person you're talking to might just leap in and say, well, I think you're going to ask about, or, well, let me tell you about this other thing, or, I didn't mention this, or something, right? We don't know what they're going to say, but leaving that space for them often gives them an ability to continue on and give you more information than you even thought you were going to get, because that's the whole point of this exercise. So if we think about what we're really going for in this process, is we want to keep people talking and telling us about their problems. We want to keep them in problem space. We want to keep ourselves in problem space. And this is, again, during market discovery period, right? During market discovery, we're trying to find out the problems that our customers are suffering from. We're trying to drill down on those, understand root causes of those problems. And we're not there to talk about solutions like what our product can do to solve those problems or how we might solve those problems. We do want to find out how their previous attempts to solve those problems have failed. That's still in problem space. But so we want to keep ourselves and them in problem space. We want to stay out of solution space. And it's really important to know that oftentimes people don't really know what they know already. So we have to help guide them through this process of discovering what they know in their brains that they aren't able to articulate when you first ask a question. And then finally, we always think as product managers and product people and technologists, we actually always think we know more than we really know. We think we know more about the situation that our prospects or these people that we're talking to, we think we know more about their situation than we really do. Oftentimes we make assumptions. We don't even realize we're making assumptions. And oftentimes those assumptions are limiting us in terms of our ability to later on create a solution for the problems that we discover. So those are our goals when we're doing this work. So how do we do that? Well, one of the ways that you've probably heard about is this thing called the 5 whys. And the idea behind this is you ask somebody why some problem occurred, and they tell you why. And then you ask, well, why did that thing occur? And they tell you why. And you keep on going down this chain of whys, and ideally by 3 or 4 or 5 whys into this chain, you have discovered the ultimate root cause. But if you ask it literally as 5 whys, the person you're talking to is probably going to be super annoyed by then. Partly because it sounds kind of robotic, partly it's not really the way that people think. And so what I recommend is using some other techniques, not the 5 whys, but some alternatives that sort of let you guide that conversation and can let you branch off in interesting ways as well as you go through. And these are the 2 great questions. And I did not invent these. I can't remember where I got these questions. And I've been racking my brain for the last week trying to remember. So I want to credit the person I got them from. But the 2 questions that you can use, and actually one's not even a question, is the first one is tell me more about that. So you ask a question about some situation. You ask your informant, what's the biggest challenge that you have right now in your job, right? That's a way that you can always start these conversations. Now, they might say, I don't have many challenges. Or you might say, or they might say, here's one thing that I'm facing. And so you may have to ask them questions to sort of get to where the real challenge is. But then they're going to start to talk about it. And they're going to talk about it at a surface level. Basically, they're going to give you a simple version of their biggest challenge. And so then you want to start getting into the root causes of that challenge. And things you want to learn are things like, well, how often does it happen? Where does it happen? How often does it happen? What did they try to do to solve it? And a good way to get into all of that line of questioning is to say, oh, tell me more about that. Or if they've told you about a thing that happens but not gone on, you can say, well, and then what? Well, the idea being that is a question. So tell me more is a statement or a request. And then what is a question, obviously. And you can use those to help drill down into the underlying root causes of whatever the potential problem is or the challenge is. Now, those are 2 ways that you can get deeper into the problem without asking the 5 whys. Now, you can, of course, ask questions like, well, why did that happen? And that's an open-ended question. That's great. Don't ask why 5 times in a row. That's just annoying. So the other thing to think about is, so that's a way to guide the conversation into deeper and deeper root causes. There's a couple of other things that we have to be aware of, though, as I said. So we do have this challenge, which is what is often called the curse of knowledge, right? We think we know more about things than we really do. And so one of the things that is really valuable to try to do is to try to overcome your own curse of knowledge by asking questions about things that we think we know. Or you can think of this in 2 ways. You can think of it as recognize that there's things that you think you know and they're typically who, what, when, where, why questions that you may think you know the answer, but you don't. And so you may look like an idiot for asking the question, although people never really think that you're an idiot. But you need to ask the question anyway. So things like, how often does this happen, right? That's an obvious one. How often do you have to do that? How often are there errors? Those are some example questions. So this how often question is something we often think we know. Like, let's say that we have financial software. We're building financial software. And we think, well, they have to do a quarterly close. So they do that basically every quarter. But you know what? It's not a bad idea to ask, how often do you do the quarterly close? They may say, well, we've practiced it a couple times before the final one. Or we would love to be able to practice it, but we can't do it because our tools don't support that. Or we tried to do a practice close with our other software, and it actually ended up doing the real close, and that was a total mess. So that's the type of thing where you don't know what you don't know. You think you know something, but the reality is there's other things that are going on that you probably need to understand. Because right there, that answer about the quarterly close gives you an opportunity to create a really powerful differentiating feature if you want to build that on that answer that you just got. Oh, with our product, again, you're going to do this later on to talk about the solution, but you're going to say, with our product, you can do practice closes as many as you want, and it's not going to mess up your real close, unlike some of our competitors. It's a great story. So another example of these types of things where you think you know, but you probably don't know is how many people are in that meeting for allocating resources to your projects. You may think that there's 5, or you may think that there's a representative from each product organization or from each project organization. There may be 50. It may be something that happens every week. How often does that? Okay, there's that how often question again. How many people are in that meeting? And oftentimes, if we're talking about a problem that involves 5 people meeting once a month, we might not want to create a solution to that technologically. That might just be, you need to have better meetings. If we're talking about a problem where there's 50 people meeting every week, it may be that there's a better solution to that if you can apply some technology to it. And that's the type of thing that we're looking for. Another one is, how many hours does that take? This is really great because if you can find something that your prospect or somebody in the market does that takes them a week, a month, every month they spend 40 hours on this piece of work. Maybe it's creating a dashboard for the executive, something like that. And you can create technology that enables them to do that in a few hours. Well, that's obviously a super valuable thing to deliver. So that's that's a type of thing that you want to discover. And you may make an assumption, well, dashboards are easy to make, or our application allows you to create dashboards. Well, you may find out that for certain customers, the dashboard process actually is really cumbersome, and maybe that's an opportunity for you to improve it. Or you may find out for this particular person who's using your competitor's product, creating dashboards is super cumbersome, and maybe you can create an alternative to that. And so those are the types of things that you want to be trying to drill down on, especially where you think that you know already, or you may already have an idea of what the answer is, and the chances are that you're probably 40% likely to be wrong. And those things that you're wrong about, those are opportunities that you need to learn about. So what are you listening for when you're doing these types of things? So here's a short list, and there's a lot more, and I've given some examples as I've talked this through. So obviously you're looking for current challenges. You're trying to understand challenges that people are having with your product if you're talking to your own customers, with your competitors' products if you're talking to their customers, that are unaddressed if you're talking to people that don't have a solution, that aren't your customers, that have maybe they've tried to find a solution. You also are trying to find success stories, both for your own customers. So obviously if you can find success stories for your own customers, that's awesome. But if you even if you find success stories about people who have discovered a new method to solve a problem that no one else has solved yet, that may again be something you can that's either knowledge that you can use as a way to help you understand if it's worthwhile going into a market, or you may be able to say something you can share with your existing customers, or it may help you decide not to create a feature. You may find out, oh, you know what? This is actually a solved problem if people go about it, approach it the right way. So we're going to put our resources into solving some other problem. So success stories are actually always valuable, whether or not they are things that are about your product or that you can direct people to for other problems. Of course, you're also looking for pain and you're looking for bad outcomes. And again, for your product, for your competitor's product, and in general, this is mostly you're going to be using this for situations where the user doesn't have a solution or they've tried multiple solutions and they've failed. And those are, of course, the opportunities that we're looking for in terms of doing discovery about problems that are unsolved that we can solve. So pain and bad outcomes. And of course, you can always ask questions about, well, how does that make you feel? That's another whole section of questions that I didn't really get into yet. Maybe that'll be another video. But questions like, how does that make you feel? What happens to you? What's the personal impact to you? And of course, there's also the business impact. What is the business impact of this problem? That's maybe more than just here's how many hours it takes, but if you don't solve this problem, what happens? Well, if we can't solve the problem of getting better leads in, maybe you're talking about a marketing product. If we can't solve the problem of getting better leads in, we're going to go out of business. All of our salespeople are going to miss quota and they're all going to get fired. There's all these different things that can happen, and we want to understand all of those things as we go through our questioning. And it really is situational, but you can always ask those questions almost as a template. What happens when that error occurs? How many times does that error occur? If you're talking about a pain or a problem, those things are you're going to have heard about errors or problems or annoying meetings or something like that, and you can always ask about how often, how many people, what happens next, tell me more about that. They work in every kind of situation that you might be facing yourself with or that you might be faced with. You also, as I said, you want to learn new understandings about the environment and the situation, like all these number questions and how often questions are really valuable to help you understand whether this problem is really worth solving, how big an impact it is on the client, without them having to say, well, this is how much it costs us in dollars. Because a lot of times people don't know that. So they know more than they think they know, but often they don't know the dollar values. And even when they know the dollar values, they may not understand some of the other costs, like the opportunity cost of 50 people meeting for an hour every week, for example. That's a huge opportunity cost, irrespective of how much that costs in terms of actual salaries and things like that. So those are a bunch of things to think about in terms of how to get around this curse of knowledge problem. So hope that you enjoyed this short video. Today's pretty short, unlike some of them. And I hope maybe you learned something or can take away some of these ideas. Like, tell me more about that. How often does that happen? And then what? Those are your 3 questions that you need to practice now. And you can actually practice the fourth one that John Cutler mentioned. And my question is, and then you leave that pause, and either your brain will fill it in, or your informant's brain will cause them to speak and start giving you some more answers. So if you like the video, please like it. Click the like button. I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. And if you think this is useful information and some of your colleagues might find it valuable, please share it. Until next week, this is Nels Davis, signing out.